welcome to Playing with Bones, where this week we'll be covering Mary Shelley.
I did a small bit of research on her today, and I learned a few things. Number one, her husband's a bit of a dick. He seems like the real tortured artist feel. And number two, if Mary Shelley lived in Ireland around this time, she'd be in her main story this week on It's a Live podcast. I'm not going to get too far into that because I don't want to
spoil it.
Well, no, you said you want to keep this episode light, so I don't want to bring us all down. With what
I'm not doing 2 heavy episodes a day in a row.
But one other thing that I realised as well was, because you kind of came to me and said she's like the original goth, the original kind of horror girl.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, the proof that, people look at horror people and they think that they're going to be like, because they like blood, guts and gore, they're going to be morbid kind of gothy kind of people who have dark thoughts all the time, or think dark things, satanic almost.
Yeah.
But then you actually meet the people and they turn out to be the most logical people with decent values and decent ideals and just want to be good and nice to everyone and just want free love and free everything, So, I mean...
free love? Does everybody want free love?
They should.
All right, Shelley. Anyway, Mary Shelley. She was an English writer and she was best known for her groundbreaking novel Frankenstein, originally called The Modern Prometheus.
It's alive.
So the Modern Prometheus obviously was called Prometheus after the Greek god. He was a Titan, Prometheus.
The only Prometheus, I didn't know what Prometheus was for ages, but I all I knew it was a cartoon from Kablam. Do you remember Kablam?
I remember Prometheus.
Prometheus and Bob.
I remember all of Kablam. I used to, I watched it religiously.
Bob was the alien, right?
Yeah.
Skinny Bob. I didn't know about that at the time.
Probably.
But that was my favourite, Prometheus and Bob. I love Kablam. I gotta go find Kablam.
Yeah, we should probably throw it on sometime soon. Okay. So Frankenstein, it's considered one of the earliest examples of science fiction and one of the most significant works of Gothic literature. Now, I know I said that she was like the original Goth, but she didn't start the whole Goth movement. So there is like examples of Gothic literature, like really significant ones like Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto in 1764 and Radcliffe's novels, The Mystery of Udolpho being one of them. That was in 1794.
But when I say she was Gothic, I mean her attitude.
Oh, her attitude. But like she did drive the Gothic literature kind of genre. Yeah. Like Frankenstein, it introduced darker and more complex themes that blended Gothic horror with science fiction, which hadn't really been done prior to that. And then her portrayal of the tragic monster and the themes of human hubris and isolation and the consequences of like unchecked ambition, it fits perfectly with the whole.
Oh, well, that's the thing. Like the documentary I watched really went into like the motivations behind what could have been behind Frankenstein. They even went back so far as to like her first child, dying and all that, and then dreams she had. But we can talk about that when we get to those points. Yeah. But it goes right back. Like, I mean, even to her father and thoughts he had about experimenting on bodies, and apparently at the time when her father was younger, when she was only a child, that was a big thing in science at the time, that they could get hung cadavers, murderers' bodies, and they could do experiments on them, but they were trying to put electricity through them. So then when the electricity was making the nerves move and the bodies move, their simple minds, scientific minds at the time, were seeing that as signs of life in the body. So she was born on August 30th, 1797 in London to renowned philosopher and political theorist William Goodwin and a feminist writer Mary Wollstonecraft, the author of A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Tragically, her mom died about 11 days after she was born, so she's quite a sad start to life. Her dad did get married again. She got married again to a woman by the name of Claremont. He was their neighbour, but she had children from a previous marriage, and she was definitely and she favoured and
Claremont.
I did my work today.
You did. But she kind of favoured her previous kids over Shelley.
But I know they said that Mary Shelley wasn't a fan of her, but it wasn't just that. It was like some of her father's friends didn't like her either, because apparently she was very argumentative. She'd pick fights for nothing, and that kind of pissed off his friends as well, so they didn't like her either. But he was very kind of determined and committed to her.
Oh yeah.
And dedicated to her. And so they were saying like the marriage did like succeed. Like
exactly.
But,
yeah.
Well, Mary Shelley wasn't a big fan of her.
No.
Or Mary, whatever her name was at that time.
Her name was Mary Shelley.
It wasn't at that stage. When her
oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was like, where are you going with
she
this?
She got married. I know she got fucking hooked up young, but I mean, not that young.
And speaking of her father's friends, like, you know, like she was around a lot of intellectual influences because of her father's prominence and the notable figures and friends that would have like visited the household.
A big anarchist kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, wanted political change and all this kind of thing.
Exactly. And they were kind of free thinkers, like.
But this was around a time where revolutions were still happening around the place, weren't they? They were kind of
you're kind of coming out of the French Revolution.
The French Revolution egged them on a lot, like.
Exactly.
And stuff like that. And then on the top of that, like she grew up reading her mother's writing as well. So she obviously admired her, but would have learned a lot of the feminist kind of ideals from her mother as well, wouldn't she?
Yeah, exactly. So in 1814, she met Percy Bysshe Shelley. 16 she was. That was in 1814.
He was 21.
Yeah, and he was married at the time. He was married to his cousin, who he married when she was 16.
Yeah?
Yeah. So they were cousins.
What's her name again?
Harriet. Harriet was her name. They met in just a tiny bit of a background about their relationship, because I don't want to turn it into a Percy episode because it's a Mary episode. But he'd met Harriet Westbrook in late December 1810. So she was a pupil at the same boarding school as the Shelleys, as the sisters, and they corresponded frequently that winter. And also after he got himself expelled from Oxford. Shelley expounded his radical ideas on politics, religion, and marriage to Harriet, and they eventually convinced each other that she was oppressed by her father and at school. So he really kind of groomed her. Yeah, exactly. Shelley's infatuation with Harriet developed in the months following his expulsion, when he was under severe emotional strain due to the conflict with his family that was going on at the time. His bitterness over the breakdown of his romance with his other cousin Harriet Grove, and his unfounded belief that he might have a fatal illness.
But was the breakdown with his family the thing about them not being willing to give him more money? Wasn't there something about that he wanted? They were a fairly wealthy family, but they were cutting him off because they didn't want him wasting all the money on stupid artistic ventures and political ventures. Because he was a big fan of Mr. Shelley. I can't remember his first name. What was his name again? Her dad, Mary Shelley's dad.
Oh, William.
He was a big fan of his theories and his political leanings, and that's kind of. Are you going to get into how you
go for it if you know?
Oh no, I was just like saying that like Mary Shelley's dad was a terrible businessman and lost lots of money, and then took out lots of loans to try and cover the lots of money, because they started a publishing company with his wife, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that wasn't doing too well, and they stole stationery and kids' toys and kids' books and stuff like that. But they were a publishing company.
They were, yeah.
And they weren't making good money. They weren't making any money. They weren't making a profit.
Yeah.
So he was taking out loans upon loans upon loans, and eventually this guy Shelley comes along and says he'll pay all the bills. He'll pay off his debts.
Yeah.
And then at the last minute kind of pulled out and left him hanging.
Exactly. Yeah. So at the same time that that himself and Harriet are blossoming romance, Harriet's elder sister, Eliza, to whom Harriet was very close, encouraged the young girl's romance with Shelley. His correspondence then with Harriet intensified in July of that same year in 1810 while he was holidaying in Wales, and in response to her urgent pleas for his protection, he returned to London in early August. So he put aside his philosophical objections to matrimony, and he left with the 16-year-old. And I'm only going into this because it's basically the same thing that happens with Mary then later on. He runs off with Harriet to Edinburgh on the 25th of August 1811, and they got married there on the 28th. So Mary Shelley used to spend time in Scotland, and they think that kind of might be where one of the places that she first came into contact with Percy.
Because like we said at the start, this group of people, like him in particular, all believe in free love. So I mean, even they don't believe in monogamy. So even if they're together, he still has the freedom to have sex.
Oh yeah, but he also believed in a woman's right to go do that and to choose her sexual partners.
We were talking about this before. Because at one point when she gets a bit shitty with him for going off with her stepsister, he starts encouraging her to go off with another guy who she flirts with for a while, but can't bring herself to do it. But there
are just to say just the romance there. Her biographers, Claire's biographers, say that there's no hard evidence to say that they had sexual relations. But when you look into it, we'll go into more.
Getting rid of the child and everything. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's a possibility. The only question I have at this point is, if she's 16 and he's 21, I only know this because I know they had to get Mary's dad's permission or get his backing to get married because she was under 21. How did they manage to get married when she was only 16 and he was 21 without the parents' permission, express permission?
Because they fuck off together for a while.
And he can get away with it that way. Like.
I mean, they go to Switzerland. We go into it, but yeah. So hearing of that elopement, of Harriet's elopement, the initial elopement, John Westbrook, that was Harriet's father, and Shelley's father, Timothy, cut off the allowances of the bride and groom. And Shelley's father had believed at that stage with this marriage that he had married beneath him. So obviously that was a big no-no at that stage. And Harriet's dad, he was a tradesman and he owned a tavern and all that jazz. So yeah, she wasn't of good enough stock for him. They survived on borrowed money for a while, and they stayed in Edinburgh for about a month, and then he returned from this kind of excursion that he went on to find that then one of her sisters had moved in with Harriet, and it's just basically Harriet gets pregnant. He kind of realizes that things aren't as fun anymore.
That's strange because as you go on, you're kind of going to see that like a lot of what affects him and Mary Shelley's relationship is the constant having kids and having them die on them, you know?
Yeah, only one of their kids survived.
Yeah, out of four.
Yeah, out of four, yeah.
And it just seems like he was kind of happy. Like even when they talk about like the first child that he was or was it his first child with Harriet that was a boy?
Yes.
Because I was reading about like how Mary Shelley was struggling to deal with the kind of jealousy when he was so happy to have a boy with this woman. Like, so and to be honest, the whole time I thought it was like a secret love affair, him and Mary Shelley. But now that I'm thinking about it, did Harriet know about this? Was this just something that was accepted? Because I know Mary knew that he was still with Harriet and was fine with it.
Well, Harriet will eventually kill herself. So,
well, I know.
Yeah, but yeah, she kind of knew.
But there's a lot of suicide amongst this group as well. She's not like the only one. One of Mary Shelley's stepsisters, or half-sister or stepsister, I can't remember. She had a sister from her mother's previous.
Yeah.
And I know she commits suicide as well around the same time as Harriet.
I have to research that. It's fine.
I can find it there. But it was, I will tell you if I can find it really quick. But she was found in, she actually contacts Shelley by letter and he panics. And goes to find her, but he didn't get there in time, and by the time he gets there she was found in some I think it was some hotel room or something like that. If I can find it.
While you're looking for that, we'll go into Mary and Percy's first date in the graveyard where her mother was buried, and on the first day they had sex, and it was a lot of sources carry that it was on the mother's grave. So that's a pretty gothy thing to do.
Yeah, on Wikipedia they just claimed that it was in the churchyard, but
a good few sources claim that it was on the mother's grave. So they develop a deep romantic and intellectual bond, even though he was married at the time, and they run off to France together in 1814.
These fuckers are all over Europe for most of this.
Yes, yeah. So at that stage, they faced many struggles. They included, as you said, the death of their first child and their financial hardship, and that more financial hardship because everybody's like, you're not getting any money off us.
Well, on top of it, I joked at the start that if she lived in Ireland, she'd be going to where our main subject is. And I kind of thought to myself when I first started reading about them that it was kind of a thing of, Jesus, they were very easy going on this lot, and they were, having sex outside of marriage, having babies outside of marriage, even her mother to have a child before she comes to her husband, and that it was very kind of all free and easy.
Yeah.
And then you kind of realize, no, everyone was still looking down on them. They were just doing it anyway.
Yeah,
they were still getting shit from everybody. They were still getting abuse from family members. Mary Shelley's father even kind of pushes her away a little bit.
He does.
Because of it, because mainly because he's against it, because they kind of come to him and say, we're together about the same time that Shelley comes to him and says, oh yeah, I'm not going to pay your bills. Yeah. So there was a bit of a hardship there already.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. The one of her family though that really didn't mind Shelley was, as you said, it was Claire. And Claire actually started traveling with them because neither of them could speak French. They couldn't speak, like when they went off. So they're like, right, well, better bring Claire with us for the old French.
Yeah, that's why they brought her with them. Sure.
So she, as we say, she may have been involved with Percy at various periods.
Fucking no problem.
Their friend Thomas Jefferson Hogg would actually joke, like
Hogg, that was the guy
Hogg.
that Shelley was trying to push on Mary.
Yeah, so
and she was into him a little bit, but she wouldn't go through with it because she was so in love with fucking Percy.
That's it. But Hogg used to call the three of them Shelley and his two wives. Do you know about the sisters? So that was actually a remark that Claire recorded in her own journal that, this is what Hogg said about us. So that's actual first-hand primary sources. Claremont, she was mostly entirely in sympathy, more so than Mary was, with Percy's theory about free love, communal living, and the right of a woman to choose her own lovers and to initiate sexual contact outside marriage.
But again, that was because she was reading her mother's books.
Exactly.
Her mother's writings and stuff like that. And her mother would have been extremely that kind of thought process. Yeah. She would, like they said, the original feminist is kind of how she would describe
Who, Mary's mother?
On the BBC documentary that was...
Oh, yeah, but this is Claire. So her mother was... Yeah, her mother was...
They're all up for it.
I know, yeah. She seems to conceive of love as a triangle, and she kind of enjoyed being the third in the triangle.
Oh, I finally found it. Fanny Imlay is her name.
Who?
Fanny Wollstonecraft. Frances Wollstonecraft. So she would have been her half-sister from a previous marriage from before, so older sister. She was found dead in the Swansea Inn along with a suicide note and laudanum, that's it, and a laudanum bottle. And that would have been on 9th of October, and on the 10th of December, then Harriet died from drowning in the Serpentine, a lake in Hyde Park, London. And both suicides were kind of... they attempted to cover them up or keep them quiet as much as they could from the public because, don't want a scandal.
Yeah.
And again, that's what we're all about this week, hiding the scandal.
Do you know what I find creepy, though, is that Percy used to call Claire my sweet child. Yeah. And
everything about him seems fucking yuck. Like the thing main thing I take away from this, and I've already said it once, and I don't want to be stepping on your toes because I know we're only kind of just getting into it.
Yeah.
But it seems like Mary Shelley loves this guy, and this guy just loves fucking riding around with anything that comes extra near him, and likes having someone that he can. I know he says he likes her intelligence and likes the fact.
But he likes everybody's intelligence. That's the problem. He likes
playing the tortured fucking artist a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Shelley's early journals recorded several times when Claremont and Shelley they had like shared visions of like Gothic horror. So this was the whole group, like like Lord Byron. He was Claire would eventually go on to have Lord Byron's child Allegra. He was another poet.
See, when I was reading about that, hang on 1 second. I read differently.
Well,
I read that they didn't specify who got her pregnant, but they did specify that Percy and Mary took her away out of the country when she was pregnant to try and hide the pregnancy. She had the kid. She took care of it for about a year. And then Lord Byron said he would take control of the child and he would adopt the child, basically take the child in. But Claire was never to have anything to do with him again.
That's it. And her name was also changed from Alba to Allegra.
Yeah. Yes. So it mightn't necessarily be his kid. There is also a chance that it's Percy's fucking kid. And that they were just trying to, again, remove the scandal and put it somewhere else.
I don't know. I think at the time, if you're a man taking in further thinking.
And this group, to be honest, aren't exactly playing by the rules to begin with.
No.
Is Lord Byron one of the two fellas they went to stay at their house because in the documentary they called the two guys that were in that house with them so-called geniuses or self-proclaimed geniuses.
Yeah. So
pretty much hinting that they weren't as fucking smart or as clever as they thought they were.
Exactly. So Lord Byron, he had a villa near Lake Geneva in Switzerland, and Percy and Mary took Claire over because they were kind of lovers at that stage. And what happened when they were staying there? So this is how Frankenstein
was conceived.
Yeah.
So it happened when they were staying there. There was a volcanic eruption that caused unusual weather. I'm presuming like the Icelandic eruption that time. So everybody had to stay indoors. And at that stage, Lord Byron, he challenged his guests to write ghost stories. And the thing was, Frankenstein was written from that, but the thing was challenging to write. Like, it was more like telling ghost stories, like, you know, like around, like, and all the men were able to spit them out. But Mary Shelley, she had to go away and think about it. She came back like a while later and she was like, I got a decent one.
Well, I mean, half the reason for that as well was because those two had such a big reputation, or because all of the people at that house had such a big reputation. She didn't want to let herself down either, and she wanted to come up with something genuinely scary. But apparently she had been having nightmares about this for a long time beforehand, and especially down to her firstborn's death, that she said she kept having a nightmare where the baby was there, or the dead baby was in front of her, and next thing it would be alive again, but it would be cold and stiff and thing, and then she'd turn around, it would be dead again, or it would be gone again, and she'd wake up out of it with the sweats. But this was a constant dream she was having, and then that's kind of again spurred on the whole idea of reanimation and then bringing something back and stuff like that. And as you could see at that point as well, she's lost her mother, she's lost children, she's
lost her sister.
You know,
Claire would lose Allegra, well, Lord Byron would eventually lose Allegra. So I mean, like, death was everywhere for Mary, like. So yeah, no, she wrote Frankenstein, as we said, obviously already. But what you were saying there about the visions, herself and Claire, like, they'd say that they were having like shared visions, like they were having like shared nightmares, like really kind of like a kind of gothic kind of themed, shared nightmares.
I did read as well that she did not refer to Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster as a monster at the start. He was a creature.
But that's it, yeah. Because he was a creature, monster, awful connotations.
The monster gets created by the abuse and the lack of basically fucking human emotion. Anybody treating him nicely or well or being mistreated, basically. She said, like, because they said in the documentary, the biggest thing was she was brought up in a loving home. Whether it was, you know, they had good times and bad times financially, but she had a good childhood and she had a loving home. And, you know, loving parents and all this kind of thing. Well, obviously her father, but she knew her mother also loved her, like, you know.
Yeah.
And that to her, the worst thing somebody could do was to not acknowledge a child, or to treat a child badly, or to not give them the love and adore a child the way they should be loved and adored.
And Frankenstein was kind of childlike.
And Frankenstein, even though he comes from the parts of a psychotic
he's basically
killer.
Newborn, like, he has to learn everything.
He's just a baby and he's mistreated, and it's that mistreatment that turns him into a monster. It's not his natural default setting. It was how you treated him. Instead of giving him compassion and love and creating something nice out of it, you treated it badly. You treated it fucking like a monster, so it became a monster. And to her, that was the worst thing you could do, was, like, you know, not give a child that kind of love. And
it is the worst fucking thing you can do.
And you can see that in her own treatment of her children. Like, she was heartbroken every time one of her kids died, and once she gets the fourth one, she fucking holds on to that little fucker like no other, like, you know?
And he survives. But one person that didn't survive is Shelley. So this happened again, like, it was pretty early on in her life, I suppose. Percy died in 1822 at the age of 29 when he had drowned while sailing the Gulf of Spezia.
Yes.
So she was what, 25? 25, she was 16, he was 21 when they got married. So
she never remarried after that, did she? She just...
No, yeah. I don't know would I have remarried after a fecker like that.
Yeah, but again, to her, she was mad. I know it's terrible, but she was madly in love with him. So, I mean, maybe that's why she didn't remarry.
Could be. Yeah.
I know at that point, she was so dedicated to being a mom and to be taken serious as an author as well. That was her decision. Like, she was moving back to England and she was going to just take care of her kid, and she was just going to
Percy Florence.
She was going to be a mom, and she was going to be a serious writer. You know?
Yeah.
Because when Frankenstein comes out, she's got to hide her identity.
Oh, she published it anonymously. There was a foreword done by Percy, but it was anonymous.
That, again, mightn't have been written by him. People thought Percy wrote the book because the foreword was so positive and was an acknowledgement of her father and his political leanings. So it still might have been her that wrote that foreword, but because
But
the
do you
foreword
think
was him,
it would be him
they
trying to
connected
get
him
back
to it.
into the pair, like the father's...
Was the father not dead at this point?
don't think so. Let me double check.
I might be wrong on that.
You.
I might have just kind of think, because when I see someone say that someone was paying tribute to a father, I just assume the guy's dead if you're paying tribute to him.
So William Godwin died in 1836.
When did Frankenstein come out?
Frankenstein came out in...
Oh, yeah, should the movie be out by 1836, wouldn't it?
Sorry?
Wouldn't the movie be out at that stage?
By 1836.
Oh, sorry, 1936. Whoa, way off.
Yeah. No, I mean, if Percy died in 1822, he was still alive.
Okay.
So it could have been to get back into the good graces of him if it was written by Percy.
But some people think that maybe it was assumed that Percy wrote Frankenstein at the time because of that foreword and because it was so positive towards the father. And then afterwards, when they realised it was her that wrote it, was like, well, maybe it was her that wrote it, so because it is, she could also be talking positively about her father, you know, so they didn't know either either way.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, like, if Percy, if he was kind of respected in his own like circles and stuff like that, did it look good to have him do the foreword?
Maybe. Is it signed by him as the...
it's definitely he did the foreword,
okay.
She... Everything else, like she published it then firstly anonymously. Also probably because, well, no, if Anne Woodcroft had her book out first, I was going to say that people wouldn't want to read a sci-fi book, sci-fi horror written by a woman. But you had your Gothic, like I said at the start of the episode, you had your Gothic novels, you had Jane Austen, you had the Brontes.
They said it was because she was a woman. Because I would assume if that wasn't an issue and if you did have if it was that easy because you had so many people do it before her, she would have just released it under her own name, wouldn't she?
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Unless, like you said, maybe it was just the way. But, like, again, she didn't sign it as Percy. She signed it as a pseudonym, wasn't it?
She
or an
signed
anonymous
it. I think
name
it was anonymous.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That to her, that to me means that you're not really playing off of the back of Percy's popularity there. You're just, you know, basically trying to hide the fact that you're a woman. That's it.
Well, yeah.
Why else? Because you're still a new author, regardless of whether you're Mary Shelley or Frank Shelley written on the fucking front cover, you know?
But she was, in her lifetime, taken seriously as an author.
Oh, yeah.
She was.
At this point.
At this point, I'd say when you're starting off, like...
18, isn't she, when she writes this?
Yes, yeah.
So,
she's very young.
If an 18-year-old girl comes up to you now and hands you a script, you're probably going to go, yeah, I'll have a look at it. But you're probably not going to expect much until you start reading it.
And
if an 18-year-old boy came up to me and handed me some script,
I'd be like,
yeah, I'll have a look.
probably have more. No offense, I would be more likely to read the 18-year-old girl's script than I would the 18-year-old boy's script, because an 18-year-old boy still has a lot of maturity.
I'd read both of them, but again, I wouldn't expect much from someone that young, you know, or something that clever from someone that young, or something that's going to be that timeless from someone that young, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of my point. It's not that someone that, obviously people that age do great shit all the fucking time, you know, but you just wouldn't be expecting, if you went to a publisher, especially in that day and age, as an 18-year-old girl and handed in a book, they're probably going to be like, yeah, we'll get around to it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I understand.
If you got a bit of clout or something behind your name, then it might be a bit different, you know?
Yes.
Even though even at that point, she was seen as an intelligent and respected woman amongst her peers. People mightn't have agreed with her free love thinking and how she went around sexually, or how she held her love life together and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of her intelligence and in terms of her ability to write a story, people did respect her even early on. Like,
she did. I mean, Frankenstein wasn't her first kind of piece of prose. Like she had a history of a 6 weeks tour in 1817. So that was just kind of like a travel narrative. You know, at the kind of like, I suppose kind of like a holiday TV show at this stage.
Yeah.
She
travel
did
book, like
Matilda in 1819. That was actually published posthumously in 1959.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there, I mean, like,
there's another one,
The Last Man.
The Last Man. I started looking at that
to see if it was Why the Last Man. Yeah. So did I when I first found out.
But I thought maybe
it.
Why the Last Man might have gotten some fucking inspiration from it, but it's not. It means the last man is in the last of humankind, as opposed to the last man alive.
It's actually set in the late 21st century. Like, exactly. So I mean, like, it's well ahead of our time, even kind of like another 50, 60 years that it's set. So she brings up Percy Florence on her own. Oh, actually, do you know what we should probably do, seeing as we're a horror show, is mention Percy Bysshe Shelley's doppelganger.
What?
So you know this story.
This the thing that was in Saltburn that you were talking about.
Yeah, and they actually do it really well because you don't notice Jacob Elordi passing in the back window. Well, I didn't until my second watch through. But so Percy Shelley, like we said, that he obviously drowned in Lake whatever the name was. But yeah, but his maid was cleaning, and and she thought in his house one day, and she was near the window, and she thought she saw him pass the window, and she got really scared because she's like, on the second floor, third floor, whatever it was. And so she kind of really freaked out. But it turned out that at the same time, then they found out the day after, 2 days after, whatever, that time, that when she saw the doppelganger, Percy had actually drowned at that time. I think that's creepy.
He wouldn't just fuck off. After being a prick in life, he came back to be a prick in death.
He probably came back to be a peeping Tom Spine. Fucking mate.
Where's Claire's room? My little girl.
Yeah, she raised Percy Florence on her. Oh, my sweet child is what he used to call her. Oh, it's so bad. I fucking yuck. And it's not the same as if people listening to this want to compare it to girls calling men daddy or pappy or whatever. It's not the same fucking thing when you say my sweet child. It's nearly something that would tie in with what people would say in our episode tomorrow. Yeah. So she raised Percy Florence on her own. Like we said, she wrote several more works. She wrote The Last Man in 1826, which is a post-apocalyptic novel. She wrote Valperga in 1823, which in contrast was a historical novel. And then she wrote biographies, and she edited her late husband's work. Now, she did in her biographies, she omitted stuff from Percy Shelley's works to try and avoid public controversy in her later years.
So she was whitewashing his backstory.
To avoid public controversy. Who were really whitewashing the whole backstory was her son and daughter-in-law, and they tried to Victorianize her memory by censoring biographical documents, and they contributed to this image that Mary Shelley was a lot more conventional than she was, which she fucking wasn't. But that was the real whole
the Sex Pistols story and fucking making it sound like the Beatles.
That was the whole Victorian thing. You didn't show your ankle, you didn't show your fucking elbow, you didn't do,
But that's so against what she was about.
Exactly.
She was anti-establishment. She was outside of being the first, she's one of the first punks in that sense of, we're not going to fucking, they weren't even, it's not that they weren't getting grief for what they were doing. They just didn't give a shit that you were giving them the grief. Mm-hmm. Their biggest problem was that the grief caused them financial hardship. Yeah. Outside of that, it was well, that's your opinion. You can go stick it up your ass. This is my opinion. And this is how I'm going to live my life. And
that was her opinion, and that's how she wanted to live. Yeah, but the commentary by Hogg, like we mentioned, and Trelawney, which was another one of Byron and Shelley's friends, and then other admirers of Shelley, they downplayed Mary's radicalism, to make Percy more so the more radical of the two, so they did downplay her opinions and stuff like that.
You'd hardly think though that, I hate saying it because it sounds like I am downplaying her a little bit then, but with the control he had over her, was she just maybe parroting some of the stuff he was saying? Did she get swept up by his radicalism and get swept along by it and fall into it then, or do you think that she only got swept up in it because she was already following her father and mother's influence?
She got swept up. I do think she had a mind of her own, but I do think she was heavily influenced by her mother's writings, as you said, and by her. She was around. It's not something that Percy introduced her to. No. She was around intelligent free thinkers of the time.
Do you think they might have had that opinion though because sometimes she was seen as uptight for certain feminist reasons that she had? I read one thing in particular where she got pissy with Percy, where she didn't want that, where she looked at him differently because of this. She got really angry with him publicly, and it was, I think they were in Italy, I'm not 100% sure, but they were down by some lake and he suggested skinny dipping, and she got really thick about it.
Yeah, do you know why?
Ideals. Well, she said it went against her ideals.
It went against her ideals as a woman, but if they were caught, it would be laughed off for him. But back then, she would have never been able to show her fucking face. And I'd have done the same. Yeah, it would be fun to go skinny dipping. But back then, you're the one that's going to have the fun out of it. And if we're seen, I am the woman in the 1820s, 1810s or whatever that is going to be ridiculed.
No, I agree with you.
There's that.
But
But
Trelawney,
again, that doesn't
like,
seem like that would have been an issue for her.
Yeah,
don't
I
think
suppose,
the ridicule
yeah.
issue would have been a thing for her. I think it would have been more the, I don't know, being... See, how can... I don't know, because then it's like, is it a thing of being sexualized by the skinny dip, but then she's at the same time, they're doing this whole free love thing where they're all sleeping together and going crazy. So I don't know. It's a hard one to kind of call, to be honest with you. But obviously, if she's reading her mother's works for her mother... I don't know. Maybe, and then again, it could have just been a case of she could have been tick with him for a completely different fucking reason that day, and he suggested it, and she was like, you know what, you prick, fuck off in there yourself. It's cold.
Exactly.
Stuck up bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Because people take things up differently. Like Trelawney that we just mentioned, he published the records of Shelley, Byron, and the author in 1878, and it praised Percy Shelley at the expense of Mary. So it questioned Mary's intelligence. It questioned her authorship of Frankenstein.
Basically saying he helped her whatever.
Yeah, which is
if she didn't
fuck
have
you,
Percy,
Trelawney.
she'd be no one kind of.
Which is bullshit, like it is. Because you can see she kept writing after Shelley, like after Shelley died.
That, from what I read, it's not like he was around all the time. From what I read, like this guy had to constantly go on the run to get away from debtors.
Yeah.
So he'd go out of town for like months at a time, and they'd just be, because there's love letters between them where they were both fucking,
I'm just about to say that in Lady Shelley, Percy Florence's wife, in response to Trelawney's records of Percy Shelley and the author, which came out in 1878, she published what's known as Shelley and Mary in 1822, and that was a response to Trelawney, and it was a severely edited collection of letters that she inherited, but it was from obviously Mary, but it was to kind of counteract what Trelawney was saying. Basically, she was an extremely intelligent woman. This is the interactions that they had between them.
That's it. And like I said, he wasn't around all the fucking time. And a lot of the time, I mean, even early on in their relationship, he was splitting his time between Harriet and her,
Oh, yeah.
And he'd be telling her that he loved her, but at the same time that he needed Harriet in his life as well at the same time. So he'd be jumping between the two of them the whole time.
But it wasn't too long in between Harriet's suicide to when he actually married Mary.
But you know why that is?
Because she was pregnant.
No.
Oh, I thought she was pregnant.
He had two children with Harriet. And according to his lawyer for the family court, he'd have a better chance of getting the kids if he was married. So even though it was against his belief, him and Mary went away and got married. And can you
imagine the puss on him the day that he got married? Both of the days that they got married.
And her father okayed that one because he was kind of fucking helping him out again a little bit or something like that. And they still didn't get the two kids. Because I think it was because maybe she was pregnant, maybe there was the stuff with Claire and all that. But a lot of stuff, obviously there was stuff about him already. They had a reputation for his womanizing and shit like that. Yeah. So the courts decided he wasn't a fit father, and the kids were sent off to live with a clergyman and his family instead. So
probably was better off.
So that's why he married her.
Considering the track record for the people over in Europe at that stage between, Byron, Claire, their own kids, those kids probably did well going after the clergyman.
I don't know.
No, the English clergy was as in they were family homes. They weren't being sent off to live with a single priest.
PTSD after all the Catholic stuff I was reading this week. But that's what I read. It was basically he married her because it looked better in the courts for him to get custody of his two kids. Yeah. But like you said, they are better off because it's fine to say this free love stuff is great, right? And it is great if everyone is cool with it. But the thing about it is, there is a lot of fucking, outside of suicide, he himself tried to commit suicide twice while he was still with Harriet because he wanted to be with Mary.
You're never going to be with Mary if you commit suicide,
Well, he thought there was no way out, so he fucking tried to commit. And then when once Mary stopped him or found him the second time trying to commit suicide, she was like, no, we can be together forever. And he was happy enough then and he got out of it. But this fella was prone to depression. No, again, he had right to have depression with the times he had depression. When their children died, they both went into deep depression.
Of course he would, yeah.
Where she would just kind of revert back and she wouldn't talk to him much and he wouldn't talk to her much. And he'd fuck off for a while and all this stuff. Yeah. Usually the only thing that got out, the thing that got him out of their depression was she'd get pregnant again. Okay. And then they'd snap out of it a little while because they'd be motivated to have this next baby. And then they'd have that baby and everything would be fine for a while. And then the baby, because the baby, they weren't dying as babies. Only one of them died as a baby. One of them were 1-2 years old when they died.
Yeah.
And then the last one survived, and that's what kept her going. Then after that was
well, you would need the kid to keep going. I would think after all that tragedy.
they were just both dropping into depression and coming
Yeah.
out of it then for the next baby. And so, I mean, there's obviously years at a time there where the two of them are fucking, you know,
Not talking to each other because they threw a breast out of their heads.
Because of the shit luck they had with children, like, you know.
Mm.
But on top of that, then they have, like you said, deaths around, and like Claire dies of natural causes, didn't she? There's the 2 suicides. Then her father fucking died. She lost her mother when she was only 11 days
11
old.
days old.
You know, so I mean, like, throughout her entire life, it does seem like everyone is. It's almost like in The Butcher Boy. We were watching The Butcher Boy last night.
Yeah.
And when Francie fucking goes into his house, you know, near the end, and he's sitting there after his friend is after screwing him over a little bit, and he's there writing on the window, the dirty, dusty window, everyone that's left him, and he's like, Ma first, then Da, then Allo, then Joe.
Except
like,
Claire did outlive Mary.
Did she?
She outlived Mary.
I thought I read that she died first.
So basically what happened was Claire, she converted to Catholicism first of all. She hated religion for most of her life. So she did convert to Catholicism. She moved to Florence in 1870 and then she lived in an expatriate colony there with her niece. And then she died in Florence on the 19th of March 1879 at the age of 80. So she outlived everybody in the Shelley circle except Trelawney and
She gave
Williams.
up the baby not long after that she died. Who was I reading about then? I
The baby?
Way off. Yeah. Huh?
Allegra died in Lord Byron's care and Claire went totally nuts at Byron. I think Allegra caught TB. I'm not too sure how long it was after Lord Byron got her, but Claire was like, you did this, like this is your fault.
Well, I know the documentary I watched from the BBC made it out like if you read it in Wikipedia, it sounds like it was just a case of, I'll take the kid. Lord Byron saying, I'll take the kid and you have nothing more to do with it. And Claire going, cool, I'm off. I'm on my holidays with these two.
I think it was a rock and a hard place.
But
it was, she
in the
knew.
documentary, it's made out more like Percy forced her. It wasn't a choice. It was, you are giving this child to fucking Lord Byron and that is the end of it. And we're having no more to fucking do with it. Forget about it. Move on.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, forced out of her, kind of out of her hands kind of thing.
Exactly. And then Mary, in contrast, she died in 1851, at the age of 53.
They reckon she had a brain tumor. Yeah.
Brain tumor.
Because they said her health in her later years was shit.
It was. Yeah.
She was only later years. She was only in her 50s when she died, but they reckon it was a big old brain tumor causing it all.
Actually, sad that a lot of the great female writers of that time died quite young. So you have one of the Bronte sisters, obviously famous for Wuthering Heights, which I would consider, I'm pretty sure it's considered a horror novel. I mean, he goes and digs up, skeletons and sleeps within the grave, stuff like that. Oh, it's really like romantic horror. It's gorgeous.
Honest,
I absolutely adore it.
Honestly, truthfully, the name of it just sounded like one of your period dramas, and I was just like,
it's a period like horror. Like I'm like the whole thing of like, the Kate Bush
and
song.
That's
just
not
to
a drama
put it in.
that she that's from a certain period of time. It's dramas Amy likes to watch while she's on her period.
Well, there's that. But no, the whole thing of the Kate Bush song, and it's based on it. It's like Heathcliff. It's me. It's Kathy. I'm calling. So basically, what it is Kathy has died, but they first kind of met, not met on the moors, but like the whole. It's set on the moors, like the Welsh moors. And the whole thing is after she dies, like they were soulmates. And after she dies, like Heathcliff is convinced he can hear her like crawling across like, like the foggy moors to him and stuff like that. Like, and he eventually goes and digs up her grave. And it's we should watch it. I think you'd enjoy it. It's good. Right. Tom Hardy's in a 2-parter. It's very, very good.
Sounds all right.
We're definitely going to watch it.
Like I said, it always just sounded like it was going to be servants and maids and royalty again.
Well, I am going to say that about Jane Austen, who was obviously another amazing female writer. She died a very painful death. I think it might have been cancer as well, but she declined very, very early on in life. Very early on. It just seems to be a theme with women writers back then, which is sad that they all died. Maybe that's why they were so great. The men keeping us down again. The male publishers, that's what it was.
Giving you tumors and cancer and shit like that. Nah, this bitch isn't going to write a better book than me. No way.
Not happening. But I mean, like she did receive even a lot of like, not notoriety because that sounds bad, but fame. I mean, the first time that Frankenstein was seen outside of like, paper media, it was a theatrical release in 1823. So it was done.
The monster looks more like Quasimodo than fucking the average.
That's 1910.
Jesus Christ.
So that was
When
the
was
first
one?
that was the first movie in
What do you mean
1910
on
on
stage,
stage. That was in 1823. So that's not long after it was written.
Do you know
at all.
what's crazy though, right? Because I was thinking, because when I was looking at all this and I was trying to figure out, especially with the whole, again, her love life. And I, again, because of all the Irish stuff we've been looking at lately, and I know that, you know, like even up until the fucking 80s, 90s here, that there was a lot of taboo against sexuality and stuff like that. So I would have thought that because of the type of person she was, that I thought that maybe there was just this period of time that she lived in where this was all okay, kind of like the 60s in England or something like that, you know, where they were fine with it and they had free love over there as well because of the hippies. And I thought maybe she just lived in this period of time where it was okay. And then obviously I was reading on about their hardships and all this because of what they were doing.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that they were willing to leave her story live on through generations with her background as society got even more uptight and more.
But that's what I was saying about her son and the daughter-in-law. They tried to hush it, like they tried to omit it, Victorianize it, like yeah,
fucking stories alive. Because like you'd have to imagine in the 1930s or 1910 when you were saying the first movie was made, that they would have looked and said, well, let alone is this is the content of this story Gothic and controversial and taboo, but the writer's really taboo too, to a point where people would say she's a harlot, she's you know, at the time, like, you know, she's we can't be promoting her, or you know, it'd be like in this day and age, in their mindset, not the way I think, but in this day and age, releasing a movie written by someone who had been Me Too'd kind of thing to them, like, you know, because she would be in their society, she would have been as bad as what we would look at fucking sex offenders being now. That's how fucking sexually repressed everyone was at the time. But she would have been looked as, she would have been looked as a total slut. And a shame to everybody and an embarrassment to her family and her name. And so, I mean, it's surprising that her work would have lived on and that they would have promoted her work knowing what she was like going forward. Like,
well, during her lifetime, she was seen as, most of her lifetime, she was kind of seen as a one-trick pony, like a one-novel author. Like, you know, they kind of disregarded her as kind of like the professional author that she was for like a lot of her lifetime.
Well, like Frankenstein's your one big one. That's it.
Yeah. Kind of like a Rick Astley kind of job. But her own conception of herself as an author, was recognized. So like after Percy's death, she wrote of her ambitions. She said, I think I can maintain myself and there is something inspiriting in the idea. So she had confidence in herself, and that confidence kind of like it.
Well, the fact that she was 25, and again in that time, if your husband or wife died, it was perfectly fine for you. It was actually most likely you were going, because they say like that even in her father's case, he married because it was a case of, I don't think I can maintain this house on my own.
Exactly.
And this woman over here with 2 kids and no husband has a bit of money in her pocket.
And she'll cook for me, and she'll clean for me, and she'll look after my kids.
And I won't have to worry about it. So you would have thought that someone like Mary Shelley, who had a big background and name and stuff like that, that she would have remarried at some stage, but she gets completely
She's gung-ho in, I am able to do this.
Yeah, I'm an independent woman. I can raise my child on my own. I can have a career on my own. I don't need a fucking man. Like, you know?
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I mean...
And scholars now agree with her. I mean, the scholars now, they consider her to be a major romantic figure. Like, she was significant for her literary achievement and her political voice as a woman and a liberal. So it is in high contrast to how she was seen, as I said, like a one-trick pony. Again, and it's only fucking fair.
And I mean... not to like encourage the one-trick pony fucking idea, but I mean, name someone else whose story has lived this long and scares people to this fucking day and is still such an iconic fucking figure. I mean, she's up there with Bram Stoker and Dracula.
Oh yeah,
you know,
she's before Bram, isn't she?
But what I mean is on the level of how fucking massive this one. Even if she was a one-trick pony, even if it was true and she did only have one successful thing, She had her one success is bigger than most of the people who fucking were commenting on her ability to write. Probably more success than any of them will ever fucking see in infinity.
And like I said, she was the first to combine the whole like Gothic romantic genre with sci-fi, like with what is fucking it is sci-fi. Like
well, it was because at the time they were just after figuring out biology as a science. And
electricity.
Like I said, they thought when they were electrocuting nerves and it was moving, it was like, so
did you ever see those pictures?
Like when you're sitting outside and your battery goes dead in your car and you're turning the car and you hear you're like shit. That's basically what they were doing with human bodies. It's like, wait, it's moving.
But they were doing it with live bodies as well. Do you ever see the black and white pictures of the guy, and he has like these kind of sticks, kind of like electrodes, like prodding his face, but he's making like the funniest faces you can imagine.
So I saw him do it with a dog.
Yeah, and then what it is with this man's faces, they were just little electric shocks that were then involuntary. Yeah, it's like when do you ever see like a freshly cut steak, and the thing still moves, like, and he still has like the tiny bit of electric kind of muscle memory going through it. It's fucking weird.
I find that hard to eat.
Yeah, fish do it a lot. Fish do it an awful lot. Yeah.
But yeah, I saw it with a dog once. I think it was some Russian experiment video or something.
Oh, I've seen that.
I didn't like it.
And the dog with the two heads.
I don't like that shit.
No,
really
it shouldn't have been done. It's fucked up,
man, to be honest with you. But I don't like looking at dead things in general, which is weird because of what we do and what we watch all week long. Real dead things creep me up.
Depends if it's wet or dry.
Huh?
I'm fine with skeletons, but I don't want to see. I don't want to see kind of like wet remains. I don't want to see anything with like, like.
It's not
flesh.
even that. It's like it's just from like it's more from like mice and rats we've seen around. If you see a dead mouse, or in the case of like when our pets have died. And I have to move them.
I don't like that.
I hate when they go stiff, and I hate touching it just freaks me the fuck out completely.
What killed me was the first big pet death that we had, like, and obviously, like, it was at the time we were still allowed to bring the pet home and bury it, which you're not allowed to do anymore. So Oscar, he was a gorgeous golden retriever we had. But he was gorgeous, but he got strychnine in him. That's a whole other story that I'm not going to go into. But they brought him home anyway.
Yeah, baby's sober. She got pissed off. She poisoned the dog.
No. He went into somebody's field who shouldn't have had strychnine in that fucking field. Anyway, but the dog was laid out in the, in the back of my dad's Jeep. And you went over and just give him one last rub, but my hand caught underneath his collar. And that's when I lost it, because I knew he was going to be cold. And then my hand just went right underneath his collar, and he still had a tiny bit of warmth just underneath the collar. And it was just like so fucking weird.
My weird aversion to it kind of came along with my paganism. Because it was, I went to a friend's funeral, very young, dying. We went to the funeral. I remember walking in and looking at his body and thinking to myself, that's not him. That's a shell. Yeah. And that person is gone. It's the same reason whenever I see somebody kiss a body and so on. And I understand why they do it. At a funeral, I think I can't, because I don't see that as the person. I just see that as like the empty shell. To me, the person is still there, like it's still here in spirit, kind of thing.
But you don't think that that's then the nice kind of thing of giving that person a kiss, because that person is still there, probably still in the room, because that's what I mean. Like, that spirit is still there, and they see you giving that last sign of respect.
Oh well, I'm certain I'm going to be a ghost now, so I'll just be hanging out with you.
That's fine.
Because I've made the decision that I'm going to, when I get there, I'll refuse to go until
without
you
me.
Come. So when you're at my funeral, you can know I'm just standing behind you with my hand on your shoulder.
Is it going to be like in Ghost, where he's like, I'm just waiting for my wife?
I'll just hang around.
That's really romantic. I'll wait around.
So if Amy's alive and I'm dead and you think you're being haunted by me, you probably fucking are, and you probably deserve it.
I'll set up extra microphones around the house, see what we pick up. That'll be the only time that I'll pay for a spirit box.
But I have a spirit box on my phone.
I don't yet, though.
It only cost me $10. Yeah. But I mean, look, come here. She would be. It's crazy for all the financial difficulties she has. She'd probably be a billionaire a billion times over at this point.
Billion times over at this point.
I'm sure her descendants make good money from her, or have made good money from her. I'm sure somebody sold the rights though a long time ago to Universal.
Oh yeah, ages ago.
Does she have a bloodline? Is there still any of them alive, do you think? So we know her son is there, right?
Yeah, so that's Percy Florence. I'll get Percy Florence here now.
I'm find it myself. So Percy, oh no, that's her spouse. I forgot he's also a Percy.
So Percy Florence Shelley, he was a third. He was a baronet himself. He had he had Bessie Florence Gibson, but she was adopted.
But there's the bloodline could still be out there. Oh no, he adopted her.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought they put her out.
So while Mary's bloodline isn't there, I'm sure Percy's is running around there somewhere, just under a different name.
Yeah.
In fairness,
that motherfucker had more kids. And that's what I was thinking. Like, you know, when it was like he left town for weeks at a time to avoid debtors and to go to his other wife's house or his other family somewhere else in the fucking world because. I mean, they traveled everywhere. They went everywhere. That was funny as well when I was watching the documentary, right? Because this documentary has to be from the 90s, right? That I was watching. Because the sound was terrible and all this stuff. But even the way your man was dressed, he was an older man, very stylishly dressed, like had a really fucking fancy moustache and all this.
Who? The person telling it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And at one point, they bought him, like, I think it was in the Alps, the Swiss Alps. And he was like, Mary eventually came here to the most dangerous point in the Swiss Alps, which is known for avalanches and stuff like this, to get the inspiration for the end of her book for Frankenstein, to feel she said it was the most isolated place on earth. And I was looking and I was like, why the fuck they fly your old ass out here, put you in a fancy suit with a hat and a cane and have you walk up this icy mountain for this 2 seconds of footage that you're
I'd
going
love
to
to know who was it? Who was it?
I'll show you after. But it was a weird one. And he's there like, and it's prone to avalanche. I was like, you are fucked if an avalanche comes along, buddy.
Birth of a Monster. Is that what it was?
What his name was.
No, I'm asking you the name of the documentary, BBC documentary.
I can tell you now because it should be on my YouTube history right here.
2003?
Possibly.
Give me a look at him.
Oh,
nobody wants to hear that. No, I can't see him. I'll have a look.
History. It is from a BBC documentary. It's just called Mary Shelley documentary.
Oh, it's Robert Winston.
Is that who he is?
Yeah, glad him.
That's him.
He's
they had
very
Robert
endearing.
Winston in the middle of the fucking Alps, and apparently the most dangerous point in the Alps, and he was just happy out fucking talking about it there with his big pimp hat. And his
somebody
big
sent
pimp
me
jacket
off to
and
the
his
Alps to
big
do 10
pimp
minutes of recording and I get to just fuck around for the rest of the day. But like, no
to the most
problem.
dangerous part of the Alps. Here's a nice suit.
No problem. Keep you nice and warm.
Fuck me. But yeah, I didn't know. She's got a way more interesting story than I thought.
Told you she had an interesting story. When I told you I was going to do Mary Shelley, do you know, as one of the weeks in Playing with Bones in March, because it was, you know, like Women's Month, I thought that maybe you thought it was going to be maybe a tiny bit of a boring episode. No. But I mean, she has a very colourful life.
I just didn't know a lot about her. All I knew about her was she wrote Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I knew about the story of how she ended up writing Frankenstein, about him being at the house, because I was laughing about that. I kept asking you, I was like, how boring was that fucking party? Mm-hmm. They all go to party and they end up writing fucking short stories for each other. But obviously that was explained to me when I watched the documentary, and you just explained it there. There was shit weather outside. They couldn't go outside. They were spending long periods of time.
Seems like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah. And it was just a case of she had to outdo the
and by God, did she outdo them?
She had to outdo the seasoned daughters that were there and seen as geniuses of the time. So she did it. She scared the shit out of all of them. And then, because she did write a little bit there and then scare them with that, but she did continue to develop the story as time went on. It isn't just a case of she wrote it over a fucking weekend.
No.
There was a bit of work that went into it afterwards. There was a lot of editing and expanding and stuff like that. But the basic idea, the short story form of it, was written that weekend. Yes,
exactly. So like you said, that there was different editing. There was kind of a few different editions as well. But I mean, there is a reason, like just what you said of, I knew she'd written Frankenstein, but obviously, like we just explained, the reason why everybody knows she wrote Frankenstein, but like nobody knows the other works, are kind of, not nobody knows, but it's not well, it used to be as well known, like her past and her background and stuff like that. But that's because of the, like I said, the Victorianization of her.
And outside of that, when you write a smash hit for something, you're going to be known for it all the time. I mean, John Carpenter's made a lot of good movies, but when you mention John Carpenter, Michael Myers is the first person that pops into your head. Then you go, oh yeah, The Thing and fucking, you know, all the other ones. Yeah. They start flowing out, like, you know, at first, your first thought is Michael Myers. Then it's why can I not think of the Roddy Piper one? That's one of my favorite fucking movies ever.
I know what you're talking about, but they live.
Oh, they live. Jesus Christ.
Mars Attack was coming into my head. I was like, don't say Mars Attack.
Blank, and that's one of my favorite movies. I love it so fucking much. I've seen that movie so
good,
many times.
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, when someone has such a big smash hit attached to their name, your first thing to go to is always going to be that. She's always going to be the woman that wrote Frankenstein. Same way Damien Leone's always going to be the guy that made Terrifier, and John Carpenter's always going to be the guy that made fucking Stanley Kubrick's always going to be the guy that made The Shining. Do you know, there's these movies that you're going to jump to first.
I think of other Stanley Kubrick ones.
Yeah, but the first thing you think of when you think of Stanley Kubrick is The Shining.
Okay.
Then you start thinking about Clockwork Orange and fucking Space Odyssey.
Eyes Wide Shut.
But your first thought, for me anyway, is you know, when it's to me that's his smash hit that everybody knows. Yeah. Everybody
knows that's a Kubrick.
Movie. And I just think that's what happened to her in this case. And in this case, Frankenstein outshines so much more. It wasn't just that it outshined her other work; it outshined everybody's other work. You know, so she set the bar so high at 18 that it was very difficult for her to jump over that fucking bar again.
And that's probably why Trelawney questioned her intelligence. Said, "Oh, that was probably Shelley that wrote it."
But the thing is, while her other work might be almost as good, it's just this one caught fire so fucking hard that it's, you know, how do you outdo yourself in that sense? Like, you kind of won the gold medal at your first Olympics, you know.
Yeah, how
and it's
do
fine
you
if you come back and win a few more gold medals. Everyone's only going to remember the first one.
Suppose you fuck off and you write a book in a different genre. I mean, if you think you've peaked there, you're kind of going to have to look at other roads.
I'd like to check out more. Do you know what I'm going to check out?
The Last Man.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out.
I'd like to read that.
That'd be a good one.
I want to read her.
Has she got any more movies made about her stuff?
There is a very good movie about her, about that weekend, all right, but actual based on her work. Let me have a look. I don't think so, if I'm being very honest. Yeah, it's pretty much all Frankenstein. I mean, you got Victor Frankenstein, Army of Frankensteins, Frankenstein Theory, Frankenstein.
Domain, there's about fucking 6 million different Frankensteins out there. I mean, even fucking what's his name has a Frankenstein movie. The quirky fucking artist, the guy with the Campbell's can.
Andy Warhol.
That's it. I am terrible with names, man.
Terrible with names today.
But Andy Warhol even has a The Flesh of Frankenstein.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, we got to check it out. I have it saved for us to watch, but I'm assuming it's going to be all
There's one. Yeah, no, I don't think that there's any others.
You would think something like The Last Man will get one. Shh, say nothing. We just have a move away. Yeah, no.
Nobody heard that.
Stick with Frankenstein. No one.
We'll add this to the list of movies that we've come up with in the last few months. Of, oh my God, that's an idea. Market opening.
Okay, so we done. We got to go write a script.
We do.
The Last Man by the Horrorverse Network. We'll do a fucking radio fucking drama with it and then have it adapted into a movie.
Okay, cool.
Let's do this.
Nice.
We're out of here. And is this the end of season 2 of Playing with Bones?
This is the end of season 2.
The end of season 2 of Playing with Bones. Shit, I got something to do. I do have a script to write. I got to get on my shit for next week for season 2 of Wrestling with Time.
I can take a month off.
For the continued rise of the NWA. How far did we get? It's more bios this time anyway. It'll be fun.
Oh, cool.
We're going to go wrestler to wrestler or NWA member to NWA member.
Nice.
Until it all ties into one big fucking federal case.
And then at the very end of your 4th episode, I'll let you know what I've decided to do for my next episode.
All right, we're out of here. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Same Horrorverse channel. Love you. Bye-bye.